Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. I'm Bill Corell, and I'm here with my wonderful friend and partner in empowerment, Jan Jermias. Today is a special episode because with all the other things in the world that we could be doing, we're here with you. Today is Memorial Day, 2026, and we normally don't talk about exactly what time of year it is, but I do think that today is probably not a bad idea to share some ideas, thoughts, and maybe a little bit of what we're doing to seek personal empowerment on a day of remembrance. How are you doing today, Jan?
Okay, Bill. And you?
I'm okay too, Jan. Let's see if we can kick it up a notch before we're done here.
Okay, sounds good.
Nothing wrong with just being okay, is there?
No, just it is what it is.
Well, I like to regard it as a temperature. So we'll take our temperature again after we've talked for what seems like an hour. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So it's been a very interesting weekend. My operation recovery goes well. I'm now kind of, just feeling how blessed I am that I live in a time when a procedure such as the one that I had can be done routinely. And what I mean by that is that I actually had a cancerous tumor removed by utilizing a CAT scan machine in order to perform the operation, because the operation was done without any surgical openings. It was done by inserting, a piece of equipment and using the CAT scan machine to both locate it verify that it's in the right place, perform the function, and then verify that it was what was intended. And I had 8 people in the room, and 5 of them were doctors. Kind of weird. And I guess if you're only going to go to the hospital every 20 years or so, it's cool to have a party while you're going through your process. And as you might expect, if you've listened to this show at all, that's kind of how I embrace life. Some people talk about challenges. I just talk about what's next. Life is a challenge. Just getting up and getting out of bed is a challenge. So I don't know, for me, I kind of paint it as, let's see if there's a way that I can maintain who I say I am through whatever comes at me today. And sometimes I am successful. Sometimes I frickin' kill it, okay? And there are other times when I fall flat on my face and I have to pick stuff out of my nose and get back up again, dirt and whatever, brush myself off, and then get back into living. But I think the main thing that I'm saying to you is that I've been through a lot in my lifetime. In the early days, I spent an awful lot of time being concerned about what would happen. Somewhere along the way, I figured out whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Kind of like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it sort of thinking. And what I found was I had a lot more fun getting to the bridge. And in some cases, the bridge never came. So at my ripe old age, I kind of look at life like terrific. Today we get to do this. Today I get to find out, how I'm going to perform with this kind of pressure or this kind of unknown circumstance. And probably not the right attitude for everybody, but it works for me. Do you know what I mean, Jan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, and I love what you brought up the last point is it works for me because I think that it's not a way everybody could navigate the world based on whatever they've been through. Um, it is a way that maybe some can, and maybe, or taking a little bit of what you're saying and saying, okay, can I adopt this for myself? Can I bring this in? Not the whole thing because they're not living your life. And so I think that that's really important for us to look at. It's important for me to look at and say, okay, well, can I take that attitude at least partially, or a little bit? And for me, I think the key phrase is I keep on saying to myself very often of late of like, well, you have a pretty good track record so far of making it this far. Like you're still
You've
standing.
gotten through everything that happened before, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm still standing, a little bit scarred, or very scarred, depending on whether those be physical or emotional scars,
Yeah.
and you've made it. And so just take that and not like, at least for me, it's like tone down the worry about what's gonna happen and then what's next. And it's like just even if I think about like, I always think of like a radio dial or volume control. It's like, can I just turn down the volume a little bit more less so that it's not total panic? And maybe it's just a little bit like of an edge, And so, but I think it's important for us to be open enough to hear what people have to say so that maybe we can try on a little bit of what they're saying
Yeah.
and say, and then figure out what works best for us in a given moment on a given day in a particular circumstance.
I love a couple of things that you're talking about. I think first of all, um, don't try to understand it. Just hear something that you like and get curious about it, and then look into that and say, well, what does that look like for me? And how can I use kind of I don't know, a metaphor that somebody else has put into their life? And can I go act like I'm going to try on a new winter coat or something like that? And there's a rack of a whole bunch of them there, and just try it on and see whether it seems to fit a little bit, or maybe it's not a little restrictive here and there. But by the end of really looking into it and being curious about it and playing, giving yourself the room to get it right and get it wrong, and not keep score, just have at it and find your way back to where you feel like your normal everyday self, and that you're not trying to operate at the level of a car wreck every single day of your life. It's hard to be creative when you feel that you're struggling to exist. You can't do it, okay? No human being can. So you have to create a situation for yourself that gets you to a little more peace and maybe a little more peace, but it's intentional. You can't just hope that it's going to happen. I
And
heard somebody,
oh, sorry, Bill. I was just going to comment on there, but you can finish.
I was just going to say, a good friend of mine uh, has a quote. He says, "Yes, pray to Allah, but tie up your camel."
I like that. But I mean, I think, but on the other spectrum, you also can't live and be upset when you're not operating in your full form. When
Yes.
you said that some days you kill it, like you can't operate trying to maintain that sort of pressure on yourself all the time, or berating yourself when you don't, um, reach it, like you don't kill it and you do fall down. I think that you have to realize that, you get up on a day, and some days I think this is from Eat, Pray, Love, so some days you get up and you feel like you're 20, and the next day you get up and you feel like you're 100, you know? And I think it's honoring and being able to see where you're at on a given day.
Yeah, you're a dynamic thing in the world. Things change over time, okay? It's what's really makes us different than a rock or a written word or something of that nature that exists through time. We're like a leaf. You take the leaf off the tree, you set it on, on a tabletop. A month later, you come back and look at it, it's changed its form. Same thing with a banana. If you think things don't change, I'm going to give you a banana. I'll see you in 3 weeks. You put it in your pocket. I'll see you in 3 weeks. Come back and tell me what it looks like. So
That's the truth.
really what you have to do is start to be good at playing 20 questions with yourself.
Mhm.
And I love, another thing that Jan does frequently is to ask questions like, what do I need right now? Your need is not going to be the same from minute to minute, let alone from day to day or year to year. So if you can take the time to calm things down to where you can actually inquire, where you can actually get into an investigation. And I mean like an investigation where you're seeking knowledge and an answer, not just asking questions to be asking them. If you have that kind of commitment to your future self, that you're going to seek a place of equanimity, and that means place of peace, calm, and quiet, where everything is good, everything is copacetic, you can do it. But you have to approach it like you can do it and not be committed to just carrying yourself through time and having whatever complaint you've got dominate your life, because your complaint is a conversational thing. The cool thing about conversational things, you cannot solve conversational things. You can only pick a rock up and set it down. You can only take a piece of wood and nail a picture to it. You cannot conversate a picture to a piece of wood. It don't work. So give yourself a break and give yourself an opportunity to create a new conversation, to get into a different state of mind that allows you to get back to your creative, wonderful, badass self, Why not? What else you got to do?
Yeah, I'm just sitting with that. And I do, and I love the fact that you said we're dynamic. And then the other thing is, there are points in your life where, where you're gonna like, it's kind of like reminds me of when I was with a client one day and her son was having a tantrum. He was very young, he was like 3 or 4. And she went up to try to make him feel better. And he looked at her and said, "But I don't want to feel better." Like, I mean, he just like wanted to vent his his anger, like his frustration. And I think that sometimes we're in that spot. Like we just want to be able to scream or do whatever we do and get that energy out.
Yep.
Then be able to say, "Okay, I had my tantrum now, okay, now I can do something." But I think that pent up energy sometimes needs to get out, and, and there are constructive ways to do it. Screaming is one, you know, dancing or whatever, or being physically active is another. There are ways that are not harmful to anyone else or anything
Yes.
else. But I think sometimes we do need to get that out. And it was just such a great visual because I remember him standing there, like tears streaming down his face or whatever. And it was like, "Leave me alone. I don't want to feel better."
I absolutely love that. Back in the day when we first had email, and you could have these auto responses, I had a friend who actually worked at the Justice Department, and he had two levels of email responses, and so he could designate them if they were professional, um, part of his job, people that had a .gov after their email address. It would go out. It would always be very, very kosher. Okay, but for good friends, he would randomize it, and he had several different things, and one of them said, I can't answer your email right now because I'm taking the moment for a richly deserved and overdue nervous breakdown. I'll be back with you just as soon as I can stare at my keyboard again and get words to start to make sense. I mean, you want to talk about rolling on the floor laughing, getting this guy from a higher up in the Department of Justice, right? And this just kind of like lets you know where you are in that friend's universe. You're in this sphere where they can completely let down and just have a ball being an intellectual. But I want to think about this as being compassionate as well, not just curious for the sake of curiosity. Imagine that you were giving comfort to a friend or a loved one or something like that, not yourself. How would you be? What person would you see yourself needing to be to actually change the state or be a catalyst for that person to change their own state? Who would you need to be in that moment? And can you be that for yourself? Is that something that you can learn how to do, is to be self-compassionate and really get yourself in the mode where you listen. Is it your automatic place to go to the minute that something goes wrong? It's always your fault, and you start with a self-beration.
And I think what you speak to, Bill, because this has been very much on my radar lately, is awareness, is to become aware of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it to myself. W Even if I do it automatically, like, even if that's let's say, the habit that has been
Yep.
created over however many years, is to actually stop myself and say, "Whoa," like, "What are you saying?" And to step back, because most of the time, they're just words and they're not, I mean, not to say they're not playing a significant role, because I do feel like words have energy, which kind of create like an energetic feeling within you, whether you kind of they're in the background or not. But it's to actually recognize and say, okay, to pause it to any extent that you can pause it and say, wait, this isn't, you're not being logical here. This does not make sense. There's plenty to talk, almost to talk yourself out of it at points. Like, if bad things always happen to me. Well, first of all, that's not true.
No,
Like,
not always.
not
You
always.
you got porn, and then most people would say that's pretty okay. The rest of your life, maybe everything went wrong.
Right, but that's not true. And to actually talk myself out of it, to actually be constructive and say, "Okay, whoa." Like, and even when if you were with a friend, you would say the same thing. You would listen, and then you would say, depending on the time and the circumstance, look at all the things you have to be grateful for. Look at all the, is it perfect? No, but a few things in life, I mean, perfect is underrated, is overrated. I mean, we sit there and I mean, there are certain things which are really beautiful and they're natural imperfections. And if life was perfect, it would be boring.
Well, there's that, and there's also when somebody says everything always goes wrong, instead of kind of pointing out the things they're not seeing, what if you just said, well, tell me in different words, because that's so general. I don't even think I can get an idea of what you're talking about. My tiny little head cannot handle everything. And as what's her name, a very famous comedian said, I don't want everything. I wouldn't know where to put it.
But and not only that, but if you say, like, tell me about it, it's kind of like
Yeah.
I think it forces someone to kind of reflect back on what they're saying.
Yeah.
And
What does it seem like to you right now? What does it feel like? If we're a
yeah,
color, what would it take? What would it be? What's it taste like?
exactly. I mean, I actually find that very valuable a lot of the time, to sit there and actually, somatically feel something, or to recognize where it is in your body. How does it feel? Does it feel dense, heavy, fluttery, cool, tight, to get all and get as many sort of descriptive words around it,
Yes.
because I feel like that diffuses it. It, first of all, once you tight it, when you start to do that, if somebody hasn't experienced that, and our listeners, once you start to do that, what happens is it kind of softens it to some extent. I think you become so, if you can get really granular and very detailed about what that feeling is, all of a sudden you realize that it's just a feeling, or it's just a color. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't hold as much power.
So it's very, very interesting, and it's also miraculous that how you solve a conversational problem is with more conversation, not giving up. The whole inquiry of what is it like allows it to be present. And all of the things that are no longer bothering you right now, they're not with you today because you were present at some point and they disappeared for you. The only things that you are concerned about today are the ones that are structurally tied to some kind of an object. That could be your recollection of a person, place, thing, or something that you've got in your environment around you that triggers an old feeling, or what have you. Or maybe your curtains are just really dark today. But the point is, the resolution to a conversation is always more conversation, and that conversation can be self-generated. And if you're really operating at a high level, folks can do that. And if you're still kind of not quite sure what you say after I feel like crap, you might want to call somebody and just engage in a what for, and just to go back and forth a little bit and just see if you can get it out there in between you, in that space between you and me. We can create this conversational object that has no mass to it, and it's ethereal, but at the same time we can get an understanding and start to communicate on how it is for you a little bit. And I think there's something very, very special and very analgesic about being able to communicate and share a trauma with a friend that allows the trauma to disappear. And I can tell you that in a bunch of the seminars that I used to do with middle managers, we would make headaches disappear. Worked 100% of the time. Three conditions had to exist at the same time. First of all, it's got to be a really good headache. I'm not interested in you need to go drink some water or something like that. Who's got a really good headache? And so two people out of 25 will put their hand in the air, and I'll say to both of them, okay, great. Are you willing for your headache to go away? And one or both of them would say, yeah, I would be willing for it to go away. And then the third question is would you be willing to go through an exercise with me in which either you may or you may not have your headache go away? And then usually either both of them or one says, I will, and I would pick whoever, and we'd do it in front of the rest of the group. And I would go through exactly, close your eyes, sit comfortably in your chair, and I want you to think about everything, every question that I ask you, and then I want you to give me your best description of the terms that I'm asking you. And that's where we go through the color. How big is it? What does it feel like? From 1 to 10, tell me what how much intensity there is there. And we go back through those questions, usually between 5 and 6 times through 7 or 8 questions, gone. Because in that process, the tension that was creating the headache, or the focusing on something that was absolutely incorrect to be focusing on as far as taking good care of your body is concerned, gone. So what I'm saying is, whatever is persisting you, if it's conversational, then absolutely be willing to give it away in a conversation. If it's physical, get a damn doctor. Okay, that's a different deal altogether.
So my few comments there is one is there are points where I mean I'll speak from my own experience where you really don't feel like talking to anybody. Okay.
Right.
If that's the case, then find another way to communicate or to have a discussion around what you're feeling or what you're going through. And that might be writing it down. It might be some sort of creative expression. It might be, but see if you can create enough space around it or create enough space around yourself that you're able to then allow it to release even just a tinge. Because most of the time, if you could do that, then, I mean, from my experience, then you might be ready to actually share it with somebody else, and that will take it further. So there are points where you sit there and maybe it's too upsetting to you that you can't express it in words. It's too scary. Um, Whatever it is, but see if you can create enough space around it so that, okay, well, I could doodle or I can write this down and it helps. It's gonna, I'm gonna process it in some way. And that's just getting technical for saying, I use it. Or, but do something that, like I said, get creative, you know, and I think there's no limit as to what you can do, but I think sometimes that's necessary depending on the circumstance and what it is. So that was, one thing, and I read an interesting, thing this morning, and it was talking about how basically it was talking about what's held in our body, and that even when we process something on an like even on a intellectual, I want to say, is kind of like when you have an aha moment about something or you realize something and you're like, oh, okay, you know, that realization really helped me shift. The body actually remembers the previous reaction, and it takes a lot longer for the body to actually change than it does for you to change, let's say your attitude towards something. That's actually quite, in some ways, very quick.
Right.
The body tends to be a lot more dense and in some ways you might say is slower in catching on.
Well,
So
it's learned it and it's memorized it.
it's learned it, it's memorized that. And that's like somatic, it's neurological, it's all these different things. And basically they were
It's
all
in
based
your physical body. It's in your muscles. It's
that's
in your
right.
nerves.
That's right. It's basically somatic. Like, I mean, you had a physiological reaction to something and it
Yes.
remembers that. And so your body tends, so when I say that, go to the doctor, I think sometimes if we can, having had a lot of experience at this, so like you said, the headache, literally physically, that
Yes.
will happen. If you sit there and you're tense and you tense up your muscles and all of a sudden your neck is killing you, and then you allow, all of a sudden you'll realize that neck pain starts to go away. And so when we address something in a conversation, whether that be with someone else, usually physically we will feel better.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I love what you said. And if you're not able to shift yourself even a little bit, do what you could have done in the first place, but really decided to put off, call somebody and then you train them how to work with you. Tell them what you want them to do and intentionally go through it. The neat part of most of our stress in our life is if we replace what we're focusing on with something else to focus on, it's miraculous. It's really miraculous because the worst monster under the bed cannot be scared away until dad comes in the room and says, "Monster, leave. Leave now." So
Before
Joey can go to sleep.
before they do that, they actually have to check.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
they
see the
actually,
monster. Oh, yeah, he's under there.
that's right. Or he has to look for it first. Can't just come in and
Validate
say it.
concern.
That's right. He has to look under the bed, open in the closets, make sure it's not in the closets.
Which is why it's so important if a friend does come to you, don't try to talk them out of it. just tell them, yeah, that's pretty normal how you're feeling and what you're saying. I feel that way myself sometimes. What would you like to do? Just be a good hand holder, be a good person who's reassuring. I'm going to tell you, it works in both directions at the same time. There's nobody giving and nobody receiving. Essentially, what you're doing is you're creating something in a conversation that didn't exist before. I always find that being with a friend who has those kinds of really scary but non-identifiable, not solid, things that you can weigh and measure and what have you, that the only way to really help in any way at all is to help them see what it isn't. When they see it themselves, they will tell you as it's going along. Well, like, no, that's not it. I'm off base there, but it feels more like it's a very interesting thing to just be there for somebody. And again, Jan, your terminology of holding space for them while they flail around, it's a blessed thing. And it's really something that's very worthwhile. And you're not going to remember right off the bat that you should really throw yourself on a friend's mercy because you feel like whatever you feel like, but try to put it into your repertoire somewhere along the way to have different people that have different kinds of conversations with you, and then diagnose who you need to speak with the most. And maybe it's not even about what's going on for you. You might not even have to share any of that at all. You might just call somebody and say, hey, look, I'm sitting here today and I just happened to notice I haven't talked to you in almost 3 months. I want to call you and just let you know how much I love you, or whatever authentically is there for you. But I'm seeing it more. I have spent a lot of alone time in the last 4 months. We're coming up on June here, and since February 1st, I have really been out of sorts and completely out of anybody's orbit unless I reached out to them. So I've spent a lot of time tracking friends and fellows on all the social media stuff, sending emails, sending pictures, creating chat GPT things that I could share with my friends and getting their responses on it, doing whatever I could to just generate conversations. And I think you'd be surprised. There's a whole bunch of them that I've actually increased our relatedness over this period of time. I haven't laid an eye on them. But I have a lot more people that would probably give me a hug right now than would have 60 days ago. Do you know what I mean? People that I haven't seen in person through that whole period of time. And we've enhanced our relationship with each other. I could have just sat here, and there were times when it was pretty dark. There were times when I didn't know if I'd ever be able to walk right again. And that was me, more or less being the normal kind of thing that crosses people's minds. So I'm telling you, and this may not work for you, or it may, but I'm telling you that I almost always felt better one way or the other, or forgot about what it was that I was having an issue with for a few minutes anyway, got a little bit of time to breathe.
Beautiful, Bill. And I think sometimes, like we said, you have to do what feels right.
Yep.
Um, for you in a particular circumstance or in a particular time. And I think that sometimes, for me, when I teach, it's usually an opportunity where I step outside whatever's going on in my own life.
Right.
And I'm in a space with other people and I'm sharing and somehow, hopefully, making their lives better in whatever form that is. And so even if whatever is going on is scary or dark or whatever, fill in the blank, overwhelming, it gives that momentary reprieve of, where you're out of the darkness for even if it's just moments.
I love
and
it. It's about focusing your attention on something.
on something and something else sometimes that's not me,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not, and it's not as a substitute for not dealing with whatever you're dealing with, but it does allow a little bit like it's almost like when you're going through something and you have the same messaging coming through your head, like the same feed is always there, and finally you're just like, you get tired, you're like, I can't listen to myself any longer. I
Right.
can't listen to that feed any longer. And I've got to go watch kitten videos or something, like I've got to go watch, you know, re, and I think that that's what happens. I mean, for me, it may not be getting online, not that I don't get online,
Right.
but it might be, going out and giving a class or doing something else where I feel like I'm helping someone.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think, what I particularly love about what you're saying is there may be something to do, and the to doing makes you be different, and then you have something different. Um, a lot of times we're all about the to doing, and we spend no time at all thinking about ourselves. But when we think about ourselves too much, we kind of add mass, to a conversation such that it starts to use words that are descriptive of objects hitting each other or something of that nature. Um, and when we do that, it creates a stronger reality, and it gives us more to focus on, like there's something to change. Sometimes all it is just changing the conversation. New conversation, new topic, move on, clean piece of paper. And at some point in your life, if you spend time really kind of getting into the inquiry here of what if Bill is onto something? What if conversations are conversational and they can't be eradicated by anything but conversation? And rarely can human beings just forget about it. I mean, it's like, it's like if you ever had anybody who was really upset and tell them to calm down? That's not worked in the entire history of calm down, okay?
It hasn't. I'm laughing
Not
because
one
that is
time.
so true. It's like, there's certain things that are, it's almost like there's a list of what not to say when someone's going through what I would call a tantrum.
Yes.
You know, um, and there's also things that you don't tell yourself that I've learned.
Yeah.
Because I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, my friend Steve, and we were talking about the fact of, when you're going through something bad and people say, well, there are people out there who have it a lot worse. At some point in the like during whatever you're going through, I'm sorry, that doesn't make you feel any better. And in a way, nor should it. You have the right to feel whatever you feel.
Yeah.
And I used in it, and I used a personal example for me. I mean, I was in divorce court, which was a horribly traumatic experience on 9/11 when the planes hit,
Oh my
literally.
goodness.
And I remember my ex-husband coming over to me and saying to me what had happened, which I totally like, I mean, it was like I didn't really believe him. And I got home and there I was hysterical, but watching TV and watching like was horrible and really feeling so conflicted was like my problem is so minor comparatively speaking to what all these people, and I still feel that way. But part of me had every right to be devastated in my own experience, which I think to some degree I denied at that point because I did feel kind of guilty of like crying over my divorce when thousands of people had died. But I think we tend to do that in life. It's like, and people like, we want to rush through something. People have it worse. Oh, so and so, there are hungry people out there who don't have any kind of attitude, don't have any food, which I'm not belittling because that's true. But we have every right to feel what we feel. And sometimes there are key things that you should not say when someone is in that space.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have every right to feel like that. Like you have every right to feel devastated, traumatized, scared, sad. That's a right that you've earned based on whatever has happened.
Yeah, I would say if you've decided that what you're doing is throwing a tantrum, then be damn good at it, okay? I mean, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly for God's sake. Don't mess around. Maybe being the grizzly is what you need and what's called for. Just be kind of careful that you're not grizzlying out on your friends, because that's how you get fewer friends too. So, but there's a cause and effect relationship for whatever you choose to do. And if you choose to be a stoic that magically lives through all of these traumatic, earth-shattering things that go on in your life, so you gain some admiration from people. But you know what, folks? There's a couple of things we do alone, and suffering is one of them. So do yourself a favor and make your commitment that it's not going to be about the show. It's going to be about the getting healthy. It's going to be about the positive way that you can go through life, riding your ship when it gets capsized by a big wave. I will never forget the time that I was kayaking, on the Connecticut River, and a rather big ship, I mean, we're talking about something the size of a submarine, went by about 100 yards away, and the wave, this was not a plastic one that stayed up by itself. This was an old canvas and wood kayak. And when it got filled with water, it went right straight to the bottom with me in it. So I know particularly what that feels like. And that was one of the worst panic situations because I couldn't get out of the darn thing. And the water there wasn't terrifically deep, probably about 16 or 18 feet. I was a good swimmer and all that. But to get back on, how did I get out of it? First, I got out of it. I can't tell you what I did. I just got out of it. So for the rest of my life, my metaphor in terms of when things are really, really bad and I feel at my complete most lost and least effective, I just say to myself, get out of it. Just get out of it. I have to get air. I have to get to the surface. Well, after I did that and I looked around, I figured, I might as well try to see if I can get my kayak to the surface and start getting some air into it. But I had to survive. I had to get through that moment first, the moment of sheer terror and panic. And when I can still feel it viscerally right now, when I started coughing underwater, which is really a bad idea. And that was when I finally, let my life-saving training, take effect. And I really noticed that I couldn't get my legs out of the kayak without kind of bending forward and doing whatever I did. But now I feel like I really accomplished something. And, that was, let me see, how old am I? Carry the 3. So that was about 55 years ago. I don't know if I'd get out of it today. Conversational stuff. I've got a lifetime of training and grounding and a whole bunch of different ways to tackle any particular situation that comes up. And that's what I suggest you do, is arm yourself. If you're the only one around and you're having a panic attack, especially over something that happened, you just get a letter from the IRS that you're being audited or something like that. Give yourself a way to get out of purgatory. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is something to well, first of all, that experience, because I think you look back and on those experiences and like you described it so beautifully of like that visceral, like you could feel it even now. It's like, those circumstances and they could have been emotional. I mean, I spoke about my divorce and I remember the physical sensation of standing there in front of my ex-husband when he like when he was leaving, nothing compares in my body. I mean, and I still like I'm so over it in so many ways, but still I have that physiological reaction and I don't have the reaction is as intense as it was years ago, but it's still there. Like I can still feel that physical sensation.
Sure.
Um and I think that we all have had those. I mean, I think if you've lived life at all, we've had I don't think anybody I know of gets by without some of those things happening.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, whether it be the audit or the end of a relationship or being physically like in danger. I mean, I don't know of a person who hasn't lost somebody, who hasn't had like a health scare in some way, hasn't whatever, and physically, could be a car accident, could be a fall,
Yes.
or both, or all of the above, you know, as you
Well,
go
I
through.
love what you said earlier in that if you put on your computer screen just the words, you've been very successful of surviving everything that's happened to you up to this point. It's likely you're going to make it through this too. Maybe that'll be enough just for a moment to get a good inhale of oxygen.
Mhm.
So you want to shift the subject just a little bit. Um, I'm very overcome this weekend with gratitude and love because I feel like this weekend is very special to me, having had a large number of people that I've known who were casualties of foreign wars. And also, it's a good time not to just not think about them, but to think about first responders that you've known, because it's the same kind of thing. We honor people in the military, but there's also another class of people that does exactly the same thing here at home. And it could be the fact that they're in the National Guard and they lose their life here protecting us, or they're police officers, or they're firemen. I think it's the same ultimate sacrifice in any event. So I just wanted to put that out there. Um, I have about people that I'm thinking about today. I've got about a dozen over the years that I have known that in the process of saving other people or saving property, uh, or what have you, not in a military sense, fighting a war, but just in the sense of going into a building that was on fire to make sure that somebody's dog or somebody's baby or somebody's grandmother made it out alive. And so I wanted to presence that for just a moment, and not to change what Memorial Day is all about, but maybe to respectfully add something that I think is very important as well.
No, I'm always very appreciative of the service that people have, whether you believe in a war or not,
Right.
and believe in when I say believe in a war, hopefully no one believes in, the actual war of killing people. Um, but to recognize that people sacrifice their lives, and more than, I mean, they sacrifice a lot whether they come back. I mean, having friends who were served in the military and then returned home, and
Yes.
sacrifice of, everybody else moving on, and they've come home with whatever trauma they've carried and had to pick up the pieces and try to create a life from there, to those who never make it home. Um, that, you know, it has a cost on either way. I have a friend whose son is at West Point at the moment. I have a fellow yoga teacher whose son is at West Point, and and she wrote something beautiful this morning about, and that was to the families of people who, she's like, now as the mother of a soldier, I understand more than ever, what that means. And I think that it's not only for the lives of the people that are lost, it's for everybody they leave behind, or everything they leave behind, meaning, every being they leave behind. So that is, um, for me, it's, I think, a little bit emotionally overwhelming. Like I get very teary when I think about that.
That's your empathy. You are one of the most empathetic women and human beings that I know.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, it all has a cost. Like it's not, nothing is nothing is free, whether that be with a life or nothing.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and wonderful opportunity to sit here for 3 days. I mean, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Jan works Saturday and she's working today. Yesterday, we spent most of the day together, and she got up and she went and did some things, out in the world. And I've spent a lot of time just really looking into and imagining scenarios in different parts of the world, and thinking about people that are out there right this minute that are in harm's way. Not just for our country, but in the world, of people who are defending people who can't defend themselves. And I guess there's an easy way to summarize this. This is kind of like everything, but good versus evil, I mean, there are a lot of people that I know who can understand that there are forces of good and there are forces that are not good. And those people that are not good are usually the ones that are, they regard human beings as consumable. Let's put it that way. That people don't matter. Other things matter. So I've spent a little bit of time kind of dwelling on that this weekend. And that's where I kind of came up with, who else could you talk about? Well, how about the people in your life that have trained you to get to where you are right now? That if you have anybody in your life, and I'm really expanding this, but if you have anybody in your life who you ask the question, what would Bill do? Or what would Jan do? You have folks in your life that have contributed to you in a way that only you understand. What would my mother do? What would Uncle Herb do? Those are the great questions to ask when you're confronted with something that you don't know what to do and you don't understand it. That curiosity, in my opinion, is really the best bridge that you can build out of purgatory. And my goal for you is you don't have to spend any more time in purgatory than you can outwit. You want to be crafty about having great things in your life? Man, more power to you. Get after it. Because that's what we were put here to do. We were not here to be human sufferers. We were put here to express love, and we were here to express creativity and joy. How do I know? I'm very certain of this, by the way. I've been told by a good source that's exactly why we're here. So if we're doing something other than that, we're kind of wasting our time, aren't we? I love these pregnant pauses.
I'm just sitting with what you said. I mean, I think that reminded of the phrase of like life is suffering, but I think that the operative sort of like the tone of that is that yes, things will happen which are whatever are horrible, and how much time do we spend there? Like, do we amplify that suffering by spending more time there than we need to?
And the subjectivity of how much time do you need to?
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, well, do you need to at all? Well, like, I mean, do you need to? But
I think that's a good way to express it. The truth is you don't need to. However, we kind of feel that we do sometimes, don't we?
well, I think that some of it is that, yeah, won't go there. I won't go down a different avenue.
There, all the avenues lead to the same place. Hopefully, they lead out of purgatory. Now, you're Jewish, so you probably don't have a notion of purgatory. I think the Catholics had to invent that, to give people a hope that they would probably not have to go to limbo, which means you're there for eternity because you're not a Christian, or you're not going to hell, okay? But you've been a bad boy, so you're going to purgatory for an eon or two, And of course, since we don't have a concept of an eon and have no idea what that would be to experience an eon, we are like, okay, well, time to take a good breath. And I think for me, what I've noticed with some people is they're living a life of pain and suffering when everything around them is absolutely fabulous and they just can't see it. I don't know. What would you call it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just think of I agree, and I don't think it's only a Catholic thing or a Christian thing. I mean, I think that religion in general, unless maybe you're, some of them, um, Buddhist or whatever, definitely had this concept of, suffering and punishment and that kind of tone to everything, or that was very much a part of the way of being and thinking. I think in other aspects, it was not so. It was kind of like, this is life, and then you move forward and move out of it.
Well, I was going to just kind of tweak a little bit when you said that somebody was, that the Buddhists are interested with the suffering and basically being a bad person. I said, you might be a Presbyterian too, so.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I think that
Every brand of religion has its shtick. And I don't mean to be irreverent to people that belong to one particular faith over another. But I do want to basically say that there's a lot of good in there. Make sure you take the good. And to your point, I'd ask a question. What if your life isn't supposed to have suffering in it? Not intense suffering all the time. And then corollary to that question is, what if you got something to say about it? in the matter of your own life? What if you got something to say? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, guess what we've done? Any wrap-up thoughts you might have, my dear?
No, I mean, I did really love the conversation today. Really, I think deep diving into, I guess I would sum up if now I'm kind of recapping the whole thing in my mind. I guess I would just say try to become aware of the different things in your life and how you're influenced by them. And then if you are in a state of, and I'm going to use a dramatic word, misery, what you can offer yourself to get out. Because it is an invitation and it's a choice.
At least, what if it is?
What if it is a choice? Yes, no, but yeah.
So you and I can clearly see that because we've paid the dues to be able to speak it. But for you who don't really see that as a truthful expression of your life, what if? Just what if?
What if there's more than this?
100%. And what if there's more than this in the next 5 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that? Kind of a neat thing that I've observed. Tell me if you agree or disagree. We have this remarkable talent and this unbelievably miraculous skill that we can either have an amazing, wonderful, take your breath away life, or we can turn it to crap in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is to be a human being. So as Jan has said, choose. And choose wisely, because what you argue for, you get to keep. Anyway, I think that's as much wisdom as you and I can squeeze into an hour.
Into an hour today?
Yes. And I'm feeling particularly enhanced because of this conversation. So ask me how I'm doing.
How are you, Bill?
I'm outstanding. How are you doing, Jan?
Great.
There you are. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just people talking. Jan, would you like to say anything to the folks?
Have a meaningful Memorial Day. Yeah. If you celebrate and you're here in the U.S., take a moment to acknowledge all the people who serve in some way. And yeah, I remember their sacrifice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Jan. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are lighting the candle, a world that works, and it's working great. So go out into the world, love on your friends and family, have a great life, and then come back and tell us all about it, please. Bye for now.
Bye for now, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.